Now, Moses saw a burning bush and found his life purpose. I don't know if we would notice a burning bush if we saw one today. I don't know if we'd even stop if we did see one. We'd probably be on our cell phones or texting while driving. We'd be scrolling through our iPod library while listening to our latest downloaded music, or watching Oprah or some 24-hour cable news. We'd probably be checking our email or surfing the internet or updating our Facebook profile. We might miss our message and our miracle. Or we might be running this way and that, picking our children up at school or dropping them in soccer practice or gymnastics classes. And we might see a burning bush on the side of the road, but we don't feel that we have any time to stop and pay attention. Or we'd be driving ourselves to the gym so that we could exercise. I always think that's so funny that we do that. We drive 2 miles to the gym so we can walk 2 miles on the treadmill while watching TV to distract ourselves. I do it too, But do you think we'd notice if the clouds parted above our heads and the voice of God rumbled in our ears and said, "You are called to do something particular with your life. You are a vessel for something that the world needs." Do you think we'd notice? Or would our ears be clogged with earbuds and Bluetooth headsets? Would our eyes be too distracted changing channels or changing lanes or changing our default settings? Now you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, whatever. I've never heard any voice telling me that I'm supposed to do anything. But guess what? You just did. You are called to do something particular with your life. Do you know what it is? There is something that only you can do, and the world is counting on you to do it. Now, I can't tell you what it is. For that, you need to let your life speak to you. There are signs all around you beckoning you toward your calling at all stages of your life. The question is whether you ever stop long enough to let yourself see them. Now, maybe you've discovered your calling, what you're here on earth to do. But remember that a calling is something that you have to choose to live out on every given day. What I mean is that you may have a strong sense of what you're about in this world, but still in every moment you have to make a decision whether to honor that call or to forsake it. Here's an example. A man named Carlos realized a long time ago that he really liked writing poetry, and he had a passion for children. He already had a day job that kept him busy and that paid the bills. But on weekends, he started to organize poetry clinics for homeless children and runaways through the local youth center. He tapped into the young people's fascination with rap music and taught them about rhyme and meter as it applies to poetry. He kept it fun, and he treated each of the youth with respect, something they weren't used to having from an adult. Some of the poems that they created made them laugh hysterically. Others moved them to silence or to tears or to anger. These young people had all but been forgotten. They were used to being run off of street corners and yelled at and dismissed. And they began to realize that they had the ability to make people smile and to make people think. And they learned how to express feelings that ran deep within them. Carlos began organizing poetry performances so that these young people could share what they had and show the community what they were capable of. And people paid money to come out and hear them, and all the money went to go and support the youth organization. He says, you should have seen the reactions on these young people's faces when they received standing ovations from the crowds, or when they held people in hysterics for long periods of time. You could almost see their sense of self-worth inflating like a heart-shaped balloon. A balloon that had been punctured and deflated for so long that it seemed that it would never fill up again. There were great highs for the kids, and some of them found their voice, and some of them found their passion, and some of them decided to get off the streets. And there were great highs for Carlos. Except that when the evenings were over, these great and fantastic evenings, he knew that most of those youth wandered away from that applause and walked right back into their lives on the cold and dangerous and heartless streets. Carlos, he came to care deeply about these young people. And at times, he watched the balloon of his own heart become deflated. For a time, he started drinking a little bit too much for a while. Eventually, it started to affect his work and his attitude. And after some years, Carlos realized that his drinking had kept him from fully living his life and his calling. Now, if it wasn't drinking, it might have been that he chose a new job to make a little bit more money, but it didn't allow him to keep doing what he loved. Or it might have been that he'd taken up a new hobby, gotten interested in something else, and sort of went away and stopped doing this for a period of time. Whatever it was, it could have been a number of things that pulled him away from his calling. There's a number of things that often pull us away sometimes from what gives our life purpose. But eventually, Carlos got back in touch with what gave his life a sense of meaning. He knew he had a gift, and he knew that there were kids whose lives he could save. In fact, in saving their lives, he saved his own. Living our calling is not always easy. It doesn't always feel fantastic. In fact, in most cases, the risks and the dedication involved in living a called life can bring us face to face with heartbreak. The lows can be as low as the highs are high. But when you feel called, it doesn't matter how hard it gets, because you know that this is what you were meant to do with your life. I remember hearing a story about a polar bear that it had been born in captivity in a zoological park, and at some point they decided, for some reason, I don't remember what it was doing, but that they needed to release the polar bear into the wild. And they took this bear, they caged it up, they brought it out to Alaska, I believe it was, and they brought it to release it. Now, they didn't know what would happen. This bear had never been in the wild. Didn't know the ways of having to fend for itself and feed itself and all of those different kinds of things. So they put a tracking device on it so they could watch it in case it needed to be rescued. But they brought it, and when they opened the cage, they had no idea whether they were going to have to prompt. They had meat and everything. They were going to prompt it out or do whatever they needed to do to get the bear to go out. And the moment they opened that cage, this bear went bounding out into the snow, into the tundra, jumping and running, and it just disappeared. And it was gone. Even though it had never been there before, this bear knew exactly what it was meant to do, and it knew that it was home. And every one of us has something that we are meant to do. You know, of all the creatures on earth, and even all the plants and all the organisms, we're the only ones that get into confusion about what we're here to do.